Well, hello there, Brandon. How you doing, man?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. This is the follow-up round 2 podcast on the one that we recorded last week, which was right before your competition.
Yes.
And I've been thinking how I can address you on this podcast. And I think the only thing fitting is, and on today's episode, we have Brandon Clark, the world's first and greatest
I like
NACA
it.
physique competitor. That sounds pretty good, right?
Yeah,
Pretty good title to have.
I like it. I like it. I'll take it.
So I'm just going to address the elephant in the room here. We got this trophy sitting on the table.
Yeah.
By the way, this is a podcast episode and a YouTube video. So if you're listening, you can watch it. And if you're watching it, you can listen. So this trophy says 2019 National Athletic Keto Association First Place Men's Champion Elite NACA Athlete. And you got a first place medal.
Yes.
And you're totally downed in the NACA
Yeah,
swag as
yeah.
well.
It came with the NACA Elite Athlete swag. So why not don it for the podcast?
I like it, man. So I want to do. So we did the follow up. This is the follow up podcast to what you had going right before you stepped on stage. So when we
Yes.
recorded last time, if anybody hadn't listened to that one, they definitely should, because it's going to give a lot more perspective on what we're talking about here. But you were how many days out when we recorded that podcast?
I believe it was 2 or 3 days.
2 or 3 days, and now it's been. The show was on Saturday. It's now Tuesday.
Yes.
So it's only been 2 full days since your show. Talk to me, man. Give me some feedback. How'd you feel going into the show since that first podcast, and what's your feelings been since?
I definitely had some nerves going into the show, but then, you're, with the peak week and everything, you also have, in addition to the nerves, you've got that, adrenaline, that, comes in and is kind of helping you along there at the end. But then you're also maxed out as far as your depleted state and what you've experienced up to that point. So it's a very interesting mix of feelings and emotions. And then on top of that, we all traveled to Dallas for it. And so there is, some stressors that go along with it, with just traveling. And for me, this was totally an unknown experience. I've never experienced anything like, competing before. So going into it, it was a very complex mix of emotions going into it.
When we talked last time, that was peak week. So your calories were at the all-time low during the weekly intake, and then we bumped them up for that Friday, the night before the show.
Yes.
But strictly from a caloric depletion standpoint, how are you feeling? What were your macros at there at the end? How are you feeling going into it as far as like just physical capabilities are concerned?
So my macros were, my calories for that last week were 1,466 calories, 133 grams of fat, about 58 grams of protein, and then under 10 total carbs. And I definitely felt like in that state I could feel it the most, the effects of, I had a tendency, it was never really horrible, but I had, would wake up in the night and I would be hungry, and then it was the calories were limited to the point that I wanted to save them all day so I could have one, really nice, satisfying meal at night, and use them all up. And that also really helped with making sure I hit the macros correctly, was kind of putting all that effort into one big main meal. But that inevitably led to being, pretty hungry throughout the day. So you're waking up hungry, pretty hungry throughout the day. And then your body kind of goes into a state where you're waking up a lot. So I was waking up in the night probably about once every 1 to 2 hours. And I would usually get up and, occasionally would have to go to the bathroom in the night, but then sometimes it would be for no clear reason at all, other than it was like my body really wouldn't relax. And
What time are you trying to go to sleep and trying to wake up there at the end?
so I was trying to go to sleep between 9:30 and 10.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to set it up to where it wouldn't ever be any later than 10 o'clock because I wanted to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and have some time to get some coffee in me and then get my workout in before work.
Gotcha. But you were kind of up and down throughout the night there towards the end.
Yes.
Were you feeling the sleep deprived?
That's the weird thing. I wasn't. It is like in that last week. I don't know if it was the adrenaline part of it or what are the um some of the different mechanisms that may have kicked into place because of how low my calories were, but it was a very weird feeling. I didn't feel super tired even though I wasn't getting much sleep. I would wake up and it's kind of my best hours were those first 2 hours between like 4 and 6 o'clock. And then the rest of the morning would be really rough into early afternoon. But then into, around early to mid afternoon, I would kind of break through into this second wind. And it would remind me of that first 2 hours in the morning where I would get this boost, and then I would almost kind of feel like I would coast on that boost until I would end up going to bed at night.
Talk a little bit about how when you're doing this, like very much towards the end, like especially that last month, you're pretty much having to mentally psych yourself up on like a 30-minute revolving basis. Like you can't live day to day. It's like literally living 30 minutes by 30 minutes.
Yeah. It really makes when you're in that state, I found that like everything seems magnified. Like your hunger, your awareness of your hunger, your awareness of your energy levels or how fatigued you are, or it seemed like your body is hyper aware of everything that's going on, and you're at a point where you're literally challenging yourself. The most you have, for me was 20 weeks, and this was the absolute peak of that, and which seems to, affect you in multiple ways. And in that hyper awareness, you everything that you're struggling with is on your mind. And so you are literally trying to, like, it does break down into like 30 to 45 minute intervals. Or like it would be in my mind, it would be like task oriented. It would be like if I was busy on a certain task, like at work, then it would break down into the phases of that task. And if the task was, a longer one, then it would start to become more of a 20 to 30 minute battle.
What are some things that you like effortlessly do in normal day-to-day living that when you're in a prep just seems incredibly overwhelming? Like even for me, opening a door, like a heavy door is like I've got to mentally psych myself up for it.
Yeah, the freezer door in the clean room where we make the bricks, I had to mentally psych myself up to open that door. And for those listening, it's it's a large, heavy freezer door, but normally it's not even a second thought, and it would be like I would almost start to laugh because it would be almost like I was preparing to utilize my breathing in a strategic way to brace for a lift. And I was doing that to open a door. But then like even really recognizing how far you were going to have to walk from your car to certain places. And even things like walking around my house at night to make sure all the doors are locked before I go to bed. Like I started contemplating I'm sure they're locked instead of making sure that they're locked, because it's like your body is trying to convince you to be as minimally active as possible. And I felt like I was talking slower. Um, I don't know if it always sounded like that, but I definitely felt like my speaking was a lot slower.
It's kind of hard to tell, man, because like there's not really any good, accurate way to track what your actual caloric expenditure is.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bunch of Fitbits and stuff out there, but I've never really put much weight in those. But when you're at a caloric maintenance or surplus, you've got a bunch of neat activities. So you're just moving around, just your constant day-to-day activity. You're burning a lot of calories through that. Whereas when you're in a prep, you're not really, you know, playing with that baseline. You're not manipulating macros based off of that baseline because you just assume, it's just your normal day-to-day functions and that stays constant. But I imagine that takes a pretty big hit when you're in a deficit because things that you would normally just do without second thought, you just don't do anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a very I had clearly there's really no way to prepare for it. I mean, it's like you just have to experience it, and then um it helps to be aware that phase is going to come, even though you don't know what quite to expect, because then when you're in it, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, all right, this is a phase. I'm not dying. The pressure, the gradual pressure that we've been applying all these weeks to get to the point that we are physically, we're at that final phase. And that helped a whole lot, knowing since you guys had told me, even though it's not the same as experiencing it, I was somewhat mentally prepared that it was going to get pretty bad, especially those last few weeks.
Was your wife looking at you like, what is this? What are you doing? Like, this can't be worth it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. She said, I think she compared it to like I was, like I was a corpse, like like I wasn't alive. And it was funny too. Like I'd be sitting on the couch, and I would have to go to the bathroom, and you like literally just sit there like and talk yourself out of going to the bathroom and like hold it as long as just so you don't have to get up and walk, to the bathroom. It's so funny. And that working out was a big mental hurdle.
It's like you almost have to train in the morning because if you wait till the end of the day, there's just no way.
No. Yeah. It had to be in the morning, which fortunately for me, those first 2 hours were the best hours. But what was funny is even though I would feel the best, I'd be like, you know what? I feel not bad. It was like my body, though, was very aware of how few calories I was working with for energy. And it was that turned into, every set was a battle. And the rest periods in between sets seemed to go by lightning fast. And I would literally, like, I got to a point, I keep a big calendar where I keep note of all my workouts and everything and anything that I find, really important. And I literally like started counting down the days on the calendar, like writing, I think it was at like 40 days left. I was like 40 days out, 39 days out. And I was calculating things like how many meals I had left to the end or how many workouts I had until it was over. And it was like all these little strategies to try and make it past those mental hurdles that you were constantly facing.
It's tough, man. Like when you're working out and you're feeling fine, you're not in a prep. It's like you take for granted the ability to just work out and have fun. I mean, training should be fun for sure, but there's times in a prep where that's the last thing you want to do. You don't want to expend any unnecessary energy, and to go into the gym and like actually have a good, solid, hard workout and push yourself is hard. I mean, like when you go into work, you're like, okay, this is the task that I have to do in order to get paid, whatever. I mean, you can kind of push through that, but when you're in the gym, it's like I have to be motivated enough to try and beat my PR. Not likely going to happen, but try to beat my PR when that's the last thing I want to do. I mean, that's tough, man.
Yeah, and usually too, like I love working out. So when you're in there, you have a good sweat, you get a good pump, and you leave with a mental boost. It's like you're ready to tackle the day, if you've done it in the morning. And in that state, it's more like, whew, I survived it. Okay, what's next? What's the next task? And I started doing things, like all of this thing about like breaking everything down into smaller increments. Like I would easily do that all right, my workout portion's done. Now it's the work day. And then you'd break the work day down into portions of hurdling to get through. And it was almost like you just wanted to get to bed at night as soon as possible to get to the next day so you could cross, one more
One
day
day.
is being done.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. Did you let's talk about the actual competition itself, because this competition was the first of its kind.
Mm-hmm.
The NACA, which on your shirt, National Athletic Keto Association. So this was the first competition that was specifically designed around the ketogenic diet and lifestyle.
Yes.
Which is pretty cool. And there's been a lot of naysayers. It's like, this was a very small show. I mean, in all honesty, there was only 3 female competitors and 5 male competitors. So an incredibly small show. But I'm really proud and stand behind what it's trying to accomplish. And I'm excited to see it grow, because when you have keto and bodybuilding in the same sentence, you're making headway.
Yeah.
And that's what this show symbolized to me. What were some specifics at this show? Like, what were some of the guidelines around this show? Like, how did you determine if you were ketogenic or not?
So they
I'm gonna pop open a Topo Chico here as we're talking.
So they mandated that you had to have an Instagram account, and once you reached 8 weeks out, every Monday you had to go live on Instagram and test your ketones live with either a Keto Mojo or a Keto Coach, and then show your results live, and they had to be a 0.5 or above. And you got a certain amount of points for if you met that standard, and that would be every week leading up to the competition. And then the Friday night before the Saturday competition, you would have to test one more time, and that would be 2 points. And then in addition to that, they looked at each competitor's social media profiles to ensure that there was that it was clearly evident that competitors were people who supported the ketogenic lifestyle and put out, that they lived that on a daily basis, and just to make sure everything lined up.
Yeah. And you could definitely, cheat the system, so to speak. You could take a bunch of exogenous ketones before testing and lie, basically. So I think everybody was just betting on people being honest.
Yeah.
Which sometimes isn't the case, but it's not a perfect system. There's no perfect system. People cheat lie detector tests at the normal natural competitions,
Right.
So there's ways to get around what the intention, the goal is. But people are being honest. You can know with pretty much certainty that the people that were on stage that day, believed in, followed, and sustained a ketogenic lifestyle, which is exciting, because most competitors, when they step on stage, they're dependent on strict carbohydrates for their building and cutting phase.
Yeah.
So let's get into some weeds here, man.
All right.
What happens, and what did you do? Like, walk me through the day before the show, so that Friday, and the day of the show.
Okay.
What are some specifics that you did with your nutrition, your posing? Like, what was your preparation looking like that 48 hours?
All right. So Friday was the day that we traveled down there, the day before the show. And on that day in particular, so I had been saving the majority of my calories for that nighttime meal, and essentially fasting or fat fasting during the day, to where I would maybe have a tablespoon of salted butter with my coffee. But on that Friday, I decided to fast the entire day, completely, only have water or black coffee, and literally save all of those nutrients for the refeed meal that night in preparation for this show on Saturday. And so my refeed that night jumped from where my daily level was at 1,466. It jumped up to about 2,300 calories, 187 grams of fat, and 130 grams of protein. And I believe I easily stayed under 10 grams of total carbs. And I also, my training was scaled way back. It was essentially just a pump up day to keep the blood flow and real no physical exertion, at all. And that was kind of more and more becoming the goal of any type of a workout in that week, was just to essentially keep blood flow going. But then also that last meal, what was really important was the sodium intake, and that increased. I had been maintaining it around 4,000 milligrams of sodium a day, and it increased to approximately 5,500 milligrams for that last meal in preparation for that day.
So when people hear that you were taking in 1,466 calories, that's like a pretty big red flag. That's pretty dang low.
That usually raises some eyebrows. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to be safe, you weren't consuming that low for very long at all. That was just that last week.
Right.
And you did offset that with that really high, not really high, but high relative to that,
Right.
2,300 calorie day. And then your protein, you said, was what, 55?
58.
58,
Mm-hmm.
which is insane. So most competitors, when they're going through a contest prep and they have their peak week, the day before the show, their protein's pretty much always high throughout the whole prep. And then they ramp up their carbohydrate intake the night before the show to fill out and have that, fuller, harder look, more vascular look on show day.
Mm.
So you obviously did not do that. You only consumed an additional caloric intake from proteins and fats.
Yes.
Carbs stayed sub 10 total grams.
Yes.
And you bumped up the sodium. You also didn't manipulate water down.
No.
I mean, you probably titrated it down a little bit, but you didn't have like an official water cut by any means.
No.
You were staying hydrated throughout the entirety of the show.
Right.
So I'm assuming, since you didn't have, a huge bolus of carbohydrates, you probably were looking incredibly flat on show day and weren't able to get a pump or have any vascularity. Is that correct?
No, it was actually the complete opposite. After it was a it's funny because we just kind of talked about those 20, 30, 40-minute intervals that you break things down into when you're suffering, when you're, experiencing those physical and mental sufferings in that last phase. And it's funny how everything breaks down into these incredibly small increments of time with, these dramatic effects, and everything seems more magnified. But after I got those nutrients in me in that refeed meal, it was it's almost immediate that you start feeling. It's like you start feeling the blood pumping through your veins. You feel this surge in energy. You feel this surge in mental focus, and then you end up you look down at your arms, and the veins, the vascularity in your arms is just insane, all like within a matter of minutes. And you literally can watch this transformation. And what's really cool is I took photos before the meal, after the meal, typically like an hour after that, and then the next morning. And you literally watch yourself transform and fill out. And instead of being this, in appearing depleted and with, minimal vascularity, your vascularity is just, magnified like tenfold, like it's insane. And then you end up seeing you gradually are filling out and then if you do any type of activity at all, and that it's like very minimal activity ends up leading to an insane pump.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a pretty mind-blowing experience.
And to be fair, that whole process becomes much more apparent, much more amplified when you are as lean as you got.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, they try to have these crazy manipulations during peak week, and it does not have the desired effect, but they never are in shape in the first place.
Okay.
You've got to be like, you got to be pretty dang close to stepping on stage in order for that to work properly. And I mean, I don't know what your body fat percentage was. We meant to get a DEXA before we left for Texas, but you were down there low, man. You were definitely sub 6. I have no doubt about that. And when you
Yeah.
get that low and you've got the diet formulated properly and you tweak the sodium and you're hydrated, I mean, it's crazy. You start manipulating that one meal and you can literally get real-time feedback and just watch as your body soaks in those nutrients and then changes right before your eyes. It's pretty cool, man.
Oh yeah, and like the extent that there was to have a sudden 900 plus calorie increase and then to not experience any bloat. It's like your body is literally a sponge just sucking up and utilizing every nutrient you put in your body.
Totally. And you also had to test ketones, like you said, on Friday before. What was your reading right there?
So I tested mine at the end of, and this was typically what I would do at the end of the day after my training, after typically fasting during the day. So on that Friday, I kind of followed that same protocol. I'd fasted all day and trained or tested that night before my refeed meal, and it was 2.5 was the test results.
2.5 millimolar.
Yes.
So it's safe to say that you were in ketosis.
Yeah, I would say so. I would say so.
And what's cool is that you were in ketosis, deep ketosis, the entirety of that 20-week prep. You weren't having to implement any carb refeeds, carb cycling.
No.
I mean, you didn't play around with any of that stuff.
No, we never utilized carbohydrates once for anything.
And you seem to do okay.
Well, I'd say I did better than okay.
I think this trophy proves that you can sustain a pretty strict ketogenic diet and come away from a competition all right with it.
Absolutely. It's it definitely worked. It definitely worked without a doubt.
And that's what's cool, man. Like, there's so many people out there that just don't think that you can reach that level of conditioning without carbohydrates. So for me, like, I've been there before. You know, that's what I implemented when I did my prep. But it's exciting for me to see other people replicate it, because then I'm not an outlier. Like, it's something that people can replicate. And you replicated it. I mean, you didn't have a coach. You just followed DSK strictly all the way through. I helped you a little bit towards the end with your posing, the tanning, and a little bit of caloric manipulations and sodium manipulations with the refeeds there at the end. But I didn't help at all other than that. I mean, everything else was all you, and you just followed DSK all the way through, which is a higher fat, moderate protein, very low carbohydrate diet.
Right.
A lot of people will say, you know, if you're trying to cut down body fat, you got to really keep protein high and take away from your dietary fat. But I think, like we said in the last podcast that you were on, I mean, you were up to 82% of your calories coming from fat there at the end. And it honestly stayed pretty high throughout the entirety of it.
It did, yeah. It stayed, and you know, I'm really glad I got to, you know, experience that for myself to the extent that you do in a contest prep like that, because with all that is out there, you know, it was nice to be able to see it proven to myself on my own body in my own experience, and see it work, and work to the extent that it did, that I was able to place first in the competition.
Is there anything that you would have done differently, kind of like looking back on it? Is there anything you would have done differently with your macros, with your training, with any tweaks that you made?
No, no, I really feel like it was and that's kind of what is so good about deeper state keto is it's not it's not a program that's like you're rolling the dice and then let's see what happens. Like there is a little bit of trial periods there, especially in the beginning, trying to determine your appropriate protein levels and fat ratios and all that. That is specific to your individual body type.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, it is just so extremely detailed with a defined, laid out strategy that it was like my confidence just continued to build as I continued through the program, and then I was very confident in my training style already, which was stayed the same and really didn't change from what I had been doing for a long time, which was just resistance bands and body weight training at home.
It's funny, man. When I made DSK, I didn't make it as a contest prep, protocol by any means. It's following the same protocol that I use myself for contest prep, but it's not a contest prep protocol. So it's
Mhm.
cool for somebody to use it during contest prep and it worked as well as it did. And for you to do the whole thing without weights, kind of like we talked about in the last podcast, that blows my mind. I mean,
Mhm.
there were so many things that you did differently with this prep. First of all, you did it ketogenically,
Mhm.
so that's a huge outlier. You did it without weights. That's a pretty big outlier. And then you did it following this high fat, moderate protein, very low carb approach within the keto diet without any carbs, cyclical or targeted. And that's becoming an outlier. So
Yep.
you
Yeah.
basically broke all the rules and you won.
Yeah, yeah, and honestly got in better shape, way better shape than I have ever been able to get to before. And, again, I've been following a ketogenic lifestyle for it's not like my body was shocked by DSK, and that's why got such magnified results. Or it, I have been keto for 3 years now.
Mm-hmm.
So my body is, and I have implemented intermittent fasting for a long time. Like none of those specific details were foreign to my body, and my body just had this crazy response to it. It was that the strategy behind it and sticking to it and the consistency and playing the long game and that gradual pressure that you detail in there as being the key to causing your body to change its composition gradually over time, but to continue taking step by step. Um, it was the effectiveness of that. It wasn't any dramatic shock of anything. The most shocking, I would say, was that uh, the magnified effect of having my carbs consistently that low. I had
Mm-hmm.
never done that before, and I had never really thought that I needed to do that to the extent that it is on the program. But you know, it was really nice because it proved a lot of things to me by seeing the effect in my own body, and without a doubt, increasing the fat and restricting the carbohydrates to that extent in my body, and obviously in a lot of others, uh, provides amazing results in your body.
Yeah, man, that's freaking awesome. All right, so after the competition, actually rewind a little bit. Before the competition's over, I wanna focus on a specific instance.
Okay.
When you go out there and you line up and you do the comparison round, you battle it out with everybody else on stage, and then when they bring you back out for the awards, and they're calling out fifth place, fourth place, third place, your name hadn't been called yet. The next name they call is gonna be second place, which means the last name they call is gonna be the winner.
Yeah.
In that moment, what are you feeling?
It's it's funny. It's such a small fraction of time but it's so clear in your memory, and you wouldn't think that your thoughts during that time, those brief few seconds, um, will be magnified to the effect that they are. But it's literally in that moment, I was like, there's nothing else. I've literally done everything I can do, and I was very satisfied because I knew deep down I had done everything and I had done it right. And it's funny in that situation. And you told me that I should feel this way, and I ended up feeling this way, that no matter what that end result was, first or second, I knew I had done everything possible to the best of my ability and was proud of where I was at. Now, I wanted first place,
Yeah.
but it was almost like in that brief second, you kind of make peace with it, you know?
That very much so, man. Like, gives you peace. Like, you know that even if you do get second, that there's no reason to hang your head. Like, when you know that you couldn't have done anything else different or more or better,
Mm-hmm.
like, you're okay with it. You're cool with
Yeah.
it. But it's so important to be able to have that confidence in knowing that you gave it your all, because I can only imagine, but the worst feeling in the world must be getting second place and knowing that you cut corners. Like, that's got to just like freaking rip your soul out.
Yeah.
I don't ever want to
Yeah.
experience that. I don't ever want to taste that.
Mm-hmm.
That, like, not wanting that feeling is motivating enough for me to push that much harder during the process,
Mm-hmm.
so that I can go to sleep each night knowing that I'll never have to have that feeling.
Yeah.
But when they do call first and your name is first, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I just edited the vlog kind of recapping that whole thing. And, the expression on your face when they called the second place winner than you, it was like just total, like, this whole weight just left your shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
And you smiled, but it was like you knew it was deserved, you knew it was earned. And there's nothing better than that, man. Like, that
Yeah.
is the coolest feeling in the world.
Yeah. It was like the perfect, like, climactic experience for the 20 weeks leading up to it. It's a crazy feeling. It's like this moment of extreme relaxation and surge of adrenaline at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And just, satisfaction, being completely, um yeah, awesome feeling.
So let's dive in a little bit deeper to some of the emotions. So after they announced it, you had your trophy and everything. We walked off. We went out to eat.
Mm-hmm.
How was that?
That was incredible. That was my first time ever being to a Brazilian steakhouse in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
That in and of itself, was an amazing, awesome experience. But having that, at the end of everything and what it had built up to, and being able to fully relax, and have, one of the most amazing meals that you've ever had. It was just like so rewarding, and at the same time, it's like your body is, I don't know, it just seems it's a very unique physical experience too, because you're experiencing this emotional response, but then you're having such nutrient dense, high quality food that it's even more magnified because your body is so depleted
Mm-hmm.
still. And um it's like you start getting depressed when you start getting full. Like, you just want it to
Never end.
last, even though you think beforehand, all I want is to be full, to have that full feeling. And in that moment when you're enjoying this amazing meal, and it's, not only tastes amazing, but is so nutrient and good for you, it's like you don't want it to end.
That was pretty cool, man. Like, after the show, We all went to the Brazilian steakhouse, 12 Cut Steakhouse, I think is what it was called.
Yes.
Shout out to them. They did an amazing job.
Oh yeah.
But we walked by, when we first walked in the door, we walked by this like massive salad bar.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, man, those asparagus like a foot long.
Yeah.
You're just like eyeing everything.
Those asparagus were insane.
And then they start bringing out these skewers of meat, and they just don't stop, and your card stays green the whole time because you're just wanting to take it all in.
Yeah.
But like, I made that like tradition. Like we did the same thing when Crystal did her competition. We went to a Brazilian steakhouse. We tried to go with my last competition, but they closed right as I got there.
Oh.
That was the most depressing thing ever.
Yeah.
Closed right as I got there.
That's terrible.
But I relived it through you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's cool to like just see you bask in all the food, man, because you know it's high quality food. And a lot of people post show, they go out and just eat like crappy food, like pizzas, burgers, ice creams, really low grade food, and they feel poorly afterwards. Whereas you were stuffing your face with like lamb and prime rib and good quality stuff, and because of that, you didn't feel terrible the next day.
No, not like actually. You know, to the contrary, I woke up and I probably ate too much and felt the effects of that the night before. But waking up the next day, my body soaked that up like a sponge, and you know, you almost feel like, especially eating high quality foods like that in the quantity and then sleeping on it, you wake up kind of feeling a little superhuman.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like because you haven't felt that the effect of having all those nutrients behind you in that surplus, but then your body's so depleted that it's sucking every inch of them up, and it makes you feel amazing.
It really makes you appreciate food.
Mm-hmm.
And like if you don't have food, you're in a deficit, you're depleted, yet you keep pushing yourself to do these day-to-day tasks. When you reintroduce that food and you feel full for the first time in months, you feel energized, your body's like got some fuel coming in. It's like those day-to-day tasks become like just trivial. It's like you can just jump into them with vigor that you never had before. And that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
And you can take that with you, with everything. I mean, like, you just have so much more perspective on life, what's hard, what's easy, what you're capable of, that you never really grasp that unless you do hard things in life. And a bodybuilding competition is such a good way, a good vehicle to use to establish that, you know?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, if you would do it the right way, I would say there's like no other better word than it is grueling.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and the experience afterwards of feeling, you know, sufficient amount of high quality calories in you, like it's crazy. Like the thought in my head was like, I've got something behind me now pushing me forward to where there was nothing there pushing me forward. I was dragging myself ahead, and that feels amazing. Like just the difference that you feel in walking from point A to point B. It used to be a task, and now, it's like trivial.
There's one thing that I meant to bring up earlier, but it totally slipped my mind. You had a surprise with this trip.
Yes.
What was that surprise?
So you guys arranged for my younger brother Adam to come to the competition, and like my mind wasn't even so we arrive in Dallas, and we get to the Airbnb, and we know we've got to drop everything off and then roll out to the meetup at the gym that night in Dallas. And so we all load up and we're driving there, and really mentally the last thing I wanted to do was jump back in the car after driving for 5 hours and drive some more. But it was a really cool meetup, happening, and I definitely didn't want to miss that. I wanted to be there for it. So we get there, and I literally am like, it's one of those things. Like I'm in a depleted state. I've been fasting all day. All I've had is black coffee and water. I'm just thinking about my refeed meal that's coming later that night. And I literally, as I'm getting out of the car, I pour out a caffeine pill and down that as I'm walking up. And I'm just expecting to walk in and we're gonna hang out and have a good time for a couple hours. And and then I pick up on one thing you said, and you're like, "Man, we got all kinds of people here," and or something to that effect. And then I see Danny Vega, and so I shake his hand, and he's like, "Man, we got all kinds of people here to see you." And I walk in, and everybody is huddled around the entrance, and it's almost like it's throwing me for a loop because I remember going like, all right, there's a lot of are they all lining up for the different competitors? I mean, I'm late to this thing. Like we were a little bit late as well. And then I notice Crystal, and she's got a camera pointed at me. And again, like there's this whole group of people, a lot of the influencers and everything are all standing there, all facing me. I'm like, I know this is a pretty cool big deal, but I just showed up, you
Yeah.
know? And I'm like, why does Crystal have the camera pointed at me? And then I can't remember who it was. Somebody, it might have been you. You're like, look in front of you. And there my mind finally comprehends that my brother Adam is like standing, 3 to 5 feet in front of me, facing me like, "Hey, I'm right here." And I had completely glossed over him. It wasn't even a possibility in my mind that I didn't even I mean, it's crazy. I didn't even process that he was standing right in front of me. It was more like, "All right, I have no idea what's going on." And so that moment, it was like I was in a depleted state and fasting all day. So my mind felt like it was, struggling a little bit already. But it was like I had this two-part reaction of like, oh my goodness, that's Adam. And I give him a hug and everything. And it's like the realization that he's here to experience this with me. Like he's the first one I told about keto after I got on keto, and he ended up losing 55 pounds, had an amazing transformation. And, so proud of him. I've done, a lot of different YouTube videos with him and stuff, and we're really close. And, all of those emotions like that, my one of my brothers is here to share this experience with me was overwhelming. And then it like had this compounded like second punch effect where, I let go of him after I hugged him, and I was like, nah, come back. And I gave him a second hug. And, cause they live back in Virginia where we used to live. And I mean, gosh, it was amazing. It was awesome.
And your oldest son was there too.
Yes. Yeah. John
That was
came
pretty
with me,
cool.
my 13-year-old. Yeah.
I'll say this, man. Like I've had all these emotions before. Like I feel like you and I have a very similar outlook on much of the same things, especially as it relates to something like this, pushing your body and subjecting yourself to something like this. So I know very well all the emotions that I experienced during a competition. I know how meaningful it is to have my brother there, my mother there, my father there, my grandparents there, whenever
Mm-hmm.
they've been to shows in the past. And I wanted you to experience that because that's special.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
everything that you did, everything that you said, every action that you took, it really just solidified that you have the right frame of mind and you're soaking it all in, you're appreciating it for what it is because it is special. I mean, like the way you thanked us for like helping you pose in the mornings, the month leading up to the show,
Mm-hmm.
the way you like hugged your brother when you saw him for the first time, the way you just like sat there and smiled when you were eating after the show. I mean, like all these things that are going through your mind and you're experiencing, I was like just watching you and reliving them all.
Yeah.
And it's cool because somebody needs to be able to step back and appreciate what's happening for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like you truly have a good grasp of what you just accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
And for that, I'm incredibly proud of you. And I mean, it's inspiring, man. Like watching you do what you've done and carry yourself the way that you have. It's very inspiring.
Wow. Thank you. That means a whole lot. I yeah, I mean, I was excited about all of us going into it, but then it was also very daunting at the same time, and something I'd never done before. And it was awesome to have you and Crystal, um, and come to work with all the support that we get here at work. And yeah, I was blown away by all the support you guys had shown for me. Um, you know, take away everything you did to get Adam there. And that was just like the mind-blowing effect. And like what you guys did, like turned, I mean, it was already going to be a very memorable experience, but maximized any potential for it to get any better. You know, it was mind blowing. It was awesome.
Well, I want this to be just like, rock solid in your memory banks for years to come, because
Mhm,
you can pull from this. You've learned things about yourself that you don't even know you've learned yet.
mhm,
And you're not going to realize it until down the road when you're faced with something, and then you can like pull back and think of this moment and use it.
mhm,
And that's exciting to know. Like, I'm excited to see those times come up.
mhm.
But I don't know, man. I'm impressed. I'm
Oh,
impressed.
thank you, thank you. It was very special, and I mean, there's not a lot of people in this world like you and Crystal, and I can't believe I get to work for you guys, and and I feel like, and Bryson and I were just talking about this, the other day, that you know it's been like 6 months
Mm-hmm.
since I got on, and it feels like we've known each other forever.
Yeah.
And Bryson and I feel the same way. It's like Bryson and I are like, I'm the manager, but we're like brothers.
Well, I gotta tell you, man, it was pretty cool for Crystal and I to be at dinner that night
Mm,
and just look around the table and see that, you know, Kara was there,
mm-hmm.
Bryson was there, the whole team was there. Your brother, John. I mean, everybody, and they all wanted to be there to support you. They
Yeah.
wanted to be there on their own accord. Like, we had them work the booth, at the venue, but they would have been there just because they wanted to be there.
Oh yeah, Kara
And that
said
was
that.
so
Yeah.
obvious.
Mm-hmm.
And that means a lot to me. Like, I want to build something much stronger than just a workplace where you come in, punch the clock, collect your
Mm-hmm.
wages, and go. Like, I want to build a family,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like we got that going.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Like it was so cool. Like it kept being energizing. Like, when you start to um experience, those dips after you have the spikes in adrenaline afterwards, as thing. But it was like I kept it being re-energized and getting, more like adrenaline dumps or something, because of how excited Bryson and Kara were. And like,
Yeah,
like I said, Bryson's like my brother, Kara is like my sister, and I've known Kara for even less time, than Bryson, but they were so genuinely excited for me, excited to be there to support me. And it's crazy to go on a trip with, quote unquote coworkers, and to be completely relaxed, and to have an amazing time, like you're on vacation with family.
yeah.
And I mean, it's so rare. I'm amazed that I'm in the position that I am right now, and extremely grateful for
Hey, man, I'm grateful to have you because you're a
it.
hell of a member of the team, bro.
Thank you.
Speaking of Keto Brick, let's just do a little shameless plug here.
Yeah, yeah.
You used the Keto Brick
Mm-hmm.
throughout the entirety of your prep. You were eating between half a brick to a full brick pretty much every night,
Yeah.
every week, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Every day for the whole 20 weeks.
I actually even found it more and more critical for me to hit my macros that I needed to hit, um, as as the calories got more and more restricted, and I would be in this internal mental battle of because, you wanted me to also, you were advising me to, you know, not just purely eat the keto brick, that to have other nutrient dense foods in there and to, still make use of red meat. And, I remember being a little upset, hearing you say that, because I was like, I was going to get to a point where I was just, I felt like I'll just live off keto bricks, as the calories get lower towards the end of this competition. And, it's funny too, because I just kept being amazed. I was like, I am down to as strict as this prep gets the final week, and then even on show day. And what am I utilizing every single day? I'm utilizing the brick, and it is not only acceptable, it's ideal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it helps you hit what you're trying to hit perfectly and provides exactly what you're looking for. Like, it just blew me away. It's, I loved the product beforehand, but I was always I was like, I wonder. I've had the thought before of like, I wonder if it's the best thing to say it's a performance product. It seems like so much more of like a keto treat
Mm-hmm.
to me. And I've had the thought before, like, I wonder if some people may not try it because they think it's a performance product, and it, not maybe think it's as good and delicious as it really is. And it just blows my mind that it's both of those. It's both of those and maximized as much as they can be. And when you're in that depleted state as well, like, you want the keto brick anyway when you're not in that depleted state. But when you're in that state, it is like a bite of pure heaven. And I mean, like, even I would get excited about the different, implementing different flavors and when, and would like literally look forward. It was the saddest thing when I would have to limit myself to, like, during that last week, it was 6/10 of a keto brick, and I would have to wrap it up and put it away, uh, or I was like really scared I was going to finish the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny, man, because I made, for anybody that doesn't know the original story of how the keto brick came to be, I made it for my own personal benefit while in a competition prep for this very reason. Like, I made it for the competition prep because I wanted something that was shelf stable, took the guesswork out of macros, hit the high fat ratio with the moderate protein, the very low carbs, and gave me the sodium I needed with the electrolytes, and just gave me the energy I demanded to make it through the day. So I made the keto brick without ever intending to sell it. And I haven't altered it any from that point. Like, it's always remained a performance bar. And for me to see you, another competitor, use it the same way that I used it and benefit from it the same way that I benefited from it,
Mm-hmm.
that's just an incredible reassurance to me that it's there for a reason,
Yeah.
Like, I believe in the product. I've always believed in the product, but it's cool to see other people believe in it for that reason. And there are other bars out there that some people probably think taste better, especially if they're not as adapted and they have that higher craving for sweeter things. Like, the keto brick is not that sweet. We don't add any additional sweeteners to it. There's a little bit of stevia and monk fruit that's in the protein powder that we use, but nothing that we add. And it is simply a performance bar. The fact that it tastes pretty damn good is just a plus, but it's a performance bar. And when you're that depleted, you can tell with absolute positivity how everything you consume impacts your body. Like, I got to a point where I could eat half of an avocado and tell you within 30 minutes exactly how my body was going to respond. You don't get that way unless you're that depleted. Like, you just
Yeah.
simply don't have that vigilance over your body unless you're that depleted. But when you are, you can, like I said, see in real time how things are impacting you. And of all the things that I tested out, I could see that the keto brick was freaking working for me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm motivated to make it.
Yeah.
And it's cool to see it still working for the same reason.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that's the other thing too. Like, I noticed my body soak it up, like, I mean, just as much as it soaked up, 80-20 ground beef.
Mm-hmm.
And which is crazy. Like I would have the thought process of, I can't believe I just downed, at the end was 6 tenths, so 600 calories
Yeah.
of a keto brick. And I was like, I can't believe I just downed, 600 calories, and I feel this amazing. And then not only that, but like I was finding, and I don't know if this is supposed to be the effect or not, in this comparison, but I was finding there towards the end, like I would have a certain amount of ground beef, 80-20 ground beef. A lot of times I would have a tablespoon of butter on it. So, a very good amount of fat, good amount of protein, nutrient dense food. And I would feel better and more satisfied and more nutrient filled after eating the brick than I did the ground, and which kind of, it surprised me. And but it was funny because I would use my macro calculator, and I would plug in, different foods for the day as I would try. It's so funny how that becomes such a huge part of your day, is figuring out what you can fit into those macros.
Mm-hmm.
And it was funny. I'd get to a point, I'd be like, oh, it was a bit of a challenge at first, because it's like your calories are restricted, but your protein percentage of those calories is so high that you eat so many grams of fat, but yet your protein is low. And for mine was 58 grams of fat at the end, and 100,
Protein.
or yeah, 58 grams of protein and 133 grams of fat. When I would be trying to make those um macro calculations with the different food options, I was always running into roadblocks until I incorporated the brick. And then it would like fit perfectly. And it was like, oh, I was like, this is perfect. And so at the end, I was essentially pretty much just having 80-20 ground beef in the brick at the end. And
Yeah.
I would look so forward to that meal.
I'm telling you, man, when I did the whole meat and bricks thing with Danny, so 2 pounds of meat for me in one brick, and I think it was 2.5 pounds of meat for him in one brick. Like, he and I both felt like rock stars. And that's
Mhm.
pretty much what I do now. Like, I'll pretty much do the meat and bricks now. And like every once in a while I'll incorporate some veggies, but I feel like $1,000,000 with just meat and bricks.
Mhm.
Like, it allows for the higher fat ratio. I'm not having to eat a whole bunch of like added butter because the brick adds so much fat itself. It's not a whole bunch of like, you know, it's just not a whole bunch of additives. It's just like
Mhm.
good quality solid stuff, and it's just easy. Like
Yeah.
meat and bricks, and you're done.
Mhm.
And I think one of the reasons carnivore is so successful is because it's such an elimination diet that it takes away so much of the noise that people are dealing with. The keto brick's not noise.
Mhm.
There's nothing in there that's like negative or leads to an adverse effect. I mean, you were eating every single flavor,
Mhm.
and none of
Yeah.
them had an adverse effect.
No.
So I don't know, man. Like I'm gonna sound biased, obviously, as the owner of the company, but I believe in a couple things. I've been thinking about this a lot lately since your show. I believe in what the keto brick stands for. I believe in what it provides, and I don't have to, you know, think secondly. Like, I know that it's quality ingredients. Like, we don't take any shortcuts. Like, you work here, you put your, sweat and tears into the bricks. Like, you know that
Mhm.
we don't cut corners,
Right.
and I'm proud of that.
Mhm.
And I'm also proud of the fact that the protocol that I implemented with Deeper State Keto, that I implement with my coaching, that I just live day to day myself, freaking works.
Mhm.
And you're like a testament to that. So that's a very unique protocol in the keto space. Like, that's my protocol, and I want it to be known so that more people can benefit from it. But it's solid. It
Oh yeah.
freaking works.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of discussion around what should work well. And granted, everybody is an individual,
Mhm.
but I'm proud that I can go to sleep at night knowing that we are building a product that benefits a heck of a lot of people for the right reasons, and that we are establishing a protocol within the keto space where there's so much question and uncertainty. We're establishing a solid protocol that freaking works
Yeah.
and helps a lot of people. Like, I can feel confident in those two things, and I take a lot of pride in that.
It's without a doubt, like I through this process and over the course of the last 6 months, I was a fan of Keto Brick before I started working here. I mean, that's how I even knew about the job announcement. Was I already followed you guys. I already had the bricks and believed that they're a great product and loved them. But going through this process and seeing the quality of the product on display and how it applied to my personal body during this competition prep from beginning to end, it's allowed me to really I am more proud than ever to be a part of this team to be the production manager over Keto Brick. And I believe now, um without a doubt, I can confidently say this is the highest quality keto product on the market that is offered anywhere. And not only that, in my opinion, it has the highest quality of ingredients, with the best taste. And I know there's a lot of things out there and people use a lot of different things to get it to taste a different way, but you are not going to find a higher quality ingredient with as good of taste as the Keto Brick. It's not going to happen. And when my kids are asking to have the brick, when they can, they have their option of all kinds of different products or foods, and they ask dad for a mocha brick, or they ask dad for some cookies and cream Keto Brick. It just makes me really proud. I'm like, heck, even a kid who has no idea of the nutrient value in it and how good it is for them, they only want things because it tastes good.
Yeah.
And then, my wife who can be picky with different foods. And it's like, you may not end up, it's not like with most things, you may not like every flavor. You're going to find one that you love. And then not only that, it's going to make you feel amazing, and you can be confident that you're not having a product that's filled with all these additives and all this other crap, just so they can try and make it taste as good as possible. But you're going to get a darn good tasting product at the same time.
I love it. I love it. I don't want this to sound like I'm like a salesy podcast. We're just so strong believers in it,
Absolutely.
Both you and I. I mean, you and I are the only two. I guess Crystal, she used it quite a bit in her prep. So I guess the three of us are the only people that I know of. There may be more out there that have done a prep and used it as much as we had throughout the prep. And for that reason, we are as avid, promoters of it because we believe in it like we do.
And, also, all three followed. All three got first place. All three followed the Deeper State Keto protocol. All three utilized the brick. I mean, there's some consistent key factors here and consistent results.
Well, man, I'm gonna let you have the honors. This podcast is gonna go live on Friday. We got a new brick dropping on Sunday.
Yes.
You want to tell people what we got coming?
I get to tell them?
You get to tell them.
All right. So I think there are a lot of people that have been waiting a long time for this, in addition to the last bomb that we dropped with the peanut butter brick. And I personally absolutely love this flavor, and I love this time of year, and the two go hand in hand. And the new brick flavor is going to be pumpkin pie. And it will blow your minds.
Yeah, I'm pretty proud of this flavor.
Pretty amazing.
We actually
I love it.
Formulated the peanut butter and the pumpkin pie the same week. So we pretty much were taste testing them at the same time. And we were all just like sitting around the table, like trying bits and pieces of both. And we're like, man, these are both freaking on the money. Yeah. I mean, I don't think I would change a thing about the pumpkin pie.
No.
Like it's solid.
Oh, it tastes amazing. And yet the macros are just like the macros on all the rest, just impeccable macros. But yeah, I remember telling you, I was like, businesses don't usually get better with the sequels,
Mhm.
that come out, but it just seems like every, the flavors just get better and better. I mean, peanut butter is awesome. My wife actually refers to it, says this is like eating a candy bar, and yet it's good for me.
Yeah.
All the kids love the peanut butter consistently, and pumpkin pie. I mean, that name fits it perfectly.
Yeah. I'm proud of it. And it's gonna go live this Sunday, which is gonna be October 20th, I believe. And it's gonna go live at 12 noon Central. So if you're listening to this, you're watching this, you want a pumpkin pie brick, we're doing a seasonal run of these things, so it's not going to
Mm-hmm.
be a full-time flavor because it is a seasonal flavor. So
Mm-hmm.
keep that in mind if you're on the
Yeah,
fence as to
we're
whether or not you're going
already sad about that as employees, that
to.
it's going to
Yeah.
end up running out. But then also, I will say that one of the most challenging things during this prep
In the kitchen making them.
was being in the kitchen making these bricks, mixing all the ingredients and pouring them, into the molds and packaging them, and literally having to take in the aroma of not. I mean, all of the bricks taste amazing, but then when you have a new amazing flavor, and I'm trying to fast during
Yeah.
the day, and yet I'm having to make the bricks. I'm having to make the peanut butter. I'm having to make the pumpkin during my last week
It's
of prep.
willpower right there, man.
It was rough.
Willpower.
It was rough.
When we first started making the pumpkin, I walked into the room and I just like the air just filled with the smell. And I'm like, man, if these things could have a smell award, this one would be number one.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The smell does the taste justice for sure.
Yeah. So I got one more question for you, man.
Yeah.
What's next? What's coming?
Oh, so for me my personal goals coming out of this experience would be to a lot of times you come out of a situation like this, and you kind of completely relax.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe make some mistakes because you've been strict for so long, and you from what I have learned and listening to you and Crystal, and reinforce these principles, is that you need to have goals. At the end of
Absolutely.
something like this, you need to keep in mind of those goals, and so with that in mind, my goals coming out of this is obviously to go into a kind of a growth phase, but I would not at all say that it's a bulk. For me and my lifestyle and my personal goals, I just want to be lean and fit year round.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to transition into more of a maintenance, gradually increase my calories to a very optimal healthy level, and higher than I was at before, ideally, um, and get to a very healthy, strong maintenance weight, leaner than what I considered my maintenance to be before. And I believe that this process, I mean, it really showed me how lean I could get, way beyond what I thought was possible before doing deeper state keto. And so it has absolutely allowed me to realize that what I thought was a reasonable maintenance, I can easily maintain at a much leaner physique. And so that's what I'm shooting for.
Yeah, man. Reverse dieting is huge because it's just like I wrote about it in that presentation I made. What goes up must come down. You can't deplete your calories that gradually for 20 weeks and then expect to just bounce back to normal living.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have to have like an inverse relationship of what you just did. So it's like a peak and valley approach. Like if you were to map it out, the competition prep from a caloric and metabolic and hormonal standpoint is like a valley. And you've got to build that back up gradually to kind of reach that new high. But I tell you, man, doing it with a ketogenic approach, and not like being dependent on carbs. Because like when you go off the deep end and you just crash a bunch of carbs post show, there's a lot of negative recourse that comes for that.
Yeah.
Whereas if you keep it pretty much meat based and you're doing just simple, quality, wholesome foods, your body's going to soak in those nutrients and it's not going to have a negative rebound. I mean, that's going to mitigate so much of a downward spiral, more so than any other manipulation you could make. Just simply eating quality, wholesome ketogenic foods. I mean, that alone is going to be huge.
Yeah.
And you like personally, I'm excited to see you reverse that out because you're going to keep it pretty clean, meat and bricks with some veggies, and you're going to be able to bypass a lot of that negative, recourse that comes with the traditional bodybuilding style reverse diet.
Yeah, definitely. And what I, have ended up learning, through you is, that I actually have the ability to reset my own metabolism, to where if I were to do this again, or even if I just, maybe not necessarily for a competition, but wanted to, go through a phase where I got a little bit leaner than average or something like that, that I can reset my own metabolism to maintain my goal, a lean and fit physique year round, easily at a much higher caloric amount than it was before the competition. And which ends up, when it's much less and you have somewhat of a damaged metabolism, then you try to get into an extremely lean state, you're going to be taking your calories to dangerously low levels, which you ideally don't want to do. And so I think, the DSK program refers to it as like increasing that runway. And I'm very excited to try and progress towards that goal of like my new goal for an ideal maintenance weight, which will be about 10 to 15 pounds lighter than it was before, all while consuming, more nutrients, a much higher caloric value each day.
Yeah, I definitely would like to see your baseline caloric intake and metabolism be set higher than it was at the onset of this prep, because you were only consuming 2,200 calories at the beginning,
Right.
which is not really. I mean, you with your build, I'd like to see you like closer to 20 to 3,000 for sure.
Right. Yeah.
But that's the beauty of it. Like every time you cycle through it and have a designated cutting and building phase, then your baseline starting point improves each time. So like you're able to start with more caloric runway, better metabolism, better hormonal balance, and then a lower body fat. So each time you cycle through it, you're just improving your body's baseline, which is huge, man. Like that's what makes body recomposition sustainable. Like there's no other way to do it. That's like the only way I know to do it, and it be healthy for you for the long haul. And I don't know, I'm just proud of that protocol because it's tried and true and obviously has worked pretty well for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's not what you hear about.
No.
For the most part, you hear about how to lose weight quick or bulk up quick. And it just goes to show you, like, so many people, I love how you always focus on taking the long game approach with anything.
100%.
In order to get the best out of whatever it is. And it just so consistently applies to everything. And if you're going to take shortcuts or try to take shortcuts, the quality is going to be low and you're going to suffer for it.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm so proud to be a part of Deeper State Keto, and so proud of Keto Brick, because and to be a part of that is the that standard, that long game approach, that quality over quantity. It's all there, and 100% faith behind it.
I appreciate that. I'm gonna give you another plug because it's deserved. You're a coach on Deeper State Keto.
Yes.
You were a coach before the prep.
Yes.
But now that you've gone through the prep, you've learned more about what is possible, both physically, mentally, and emotionally. And I have no doubt that you're going to be a significantly better coach. You are already a great coach, but you're going to be an even better coach now. Not only with the protocol, because you've pushed the protocol to the limit, but also just as a as a human and knowing how to communicate with other humans and just knowing how the body works. Because like I've said several times during this podcast, you just are able to tap into real-time feedback that the body gives you when you're at the depth of a prep like that. So having that information and taking it, applying it to your clients is going to be key.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I would say to, and that's without a doubt. And I would say to anybody out there because so many people get on a ketogenic diet, and they kind of do, I guess, what's referred to as a dirty ketogenic diet, or very, non-structured, and you can lose some weight like that. You can lose a little bit of weight like that, but it's definitely not ideal, and you're definitely not, taking yourself to your full potential. And I think a lot of people cut themselves short, and don't really believe they can get to where they actually can get to.
Yeah.
And I absolutely would like to say to all the listeners, if you've never taken yourself to through anything to try and get to the best that you personally can be, to the best version of yourself, and you've kind of always just ended up being satisfied with, I guess no better word than just mediocre results. If you're interested, Deeper State Keto will absolutely get you there, and it takes out all of the guesswork. You just got to follow the protocol, and it is laid out in a more detailed and strategic way than you will find in any other program. I'm 100% confident.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate that it's coming from you, not me, because it just sounds sales if it's coming from me. But, you've just proven your point this past weekend.
Hey, we got a first place trophy right here.
100%. Well, shoot, man. Let's call it quits on the podcast. I'm going to go eat a Keto Brick. We'll go put your trophy on the top shelf somewhere.
That's right.
We'll get back to making some bricks.
All right. Sounds good.